So hi, Ali, and welcome to our podcast. It's a true honor of having you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to speak with you. And obviously, having had the World Cup in France and then being a Swede myself, it's a perfect match, I think, to be
Yeah,
on your podcast.
for sure. And you are also the first New Zealand athlete that we get, so it's even
Oh,
a
thank you.
bigger honor, yeah, to have you. So starting at the beginning, when did you first start playing football, and why did you start playing football?
I started playing when I was 4 or 5, just with the local recreational program here where I live in Pacific Palisades. And in Southern California, I think pretty much everyone was or still does play soccer when they're little. It's so common. So it just kind of, yeah, I didn't really get into basketball until a little bit later. So I did gymnastics, swimming, and soccer. And my dad was my coach for many, many years. So it was something we did together and just went down to the park. And my first two teams were co-ed, boys and girls. And then already at 7 years old, there's all girls teams and all girls leagues because soccer is so, so, so popular here.
Of course. And so you talked about you playing like other sport. Why did you like choose soccer?
So it took a while. I did every sport possible in middle school, junior high, and in high school, I even did tennis, track, and soccer. So in the end, I think I loved the team sport aspect. That's pretty much, I mean, with track and tennis, especially track, I thought it was there was so much pressure and a little bit, yeah, intense when you're on your own.
Of
And
course, yeah.
yeah, just a different vibe. In soccer, I'm an only child, and I think I loved having that camaraderie. And in the beginning, I just sat on the grass and picked flowers and got play dates. So I would make new friends and get new playmates, and that was the best. And spend time with my dad. So I think especially the team part as I got older too, I loved having that sense of a big family with all these girls. And yeah, it still means so much to me being on a team, especially when I'm far away from home, playing for a national team that's very far away from where I grew up. Having that team aspect is the best. I love it. I love it so much. Every team becomes my family. And yeah, especially the national team, of course.
Of course. That makes sense. And did you know you wanted to become like professional like straight away, or did it come later?
No, when I was growing up, I didn't know that you could be a professional soccer player as a woman.
Okay.
And I knew about the U.S. national team. I was at the 99 World Cup final in LA, and that made me love soccer. And I was a huge fan of Mia Hamm and Michelle Akers and Brianna Scurry. But I didn't know that you could play soccer as a profession. And the WUSA folded, and there wasn't a league again until my senior year of college. So no, it was not at all on my radar in terms of profession. But I knew I wanted to play at an Olympic Games. That just seemed like the coolest thing. And I was kind of like, I'll pick up any sport it takes to go to the Olympics. And as Americans, I think we're obsessed with the Olympics. So I just really wanted to go to an Olympics. And yeah, but I didn't have that path or kind of nothing tangible where it was like, oh, if I do this, I'll make the U.S. national team. I just really liked soccer. And when I was in high school, I had some teammates on the high school team who had scholarships to play in college at a Division I college. And to have soccer be a way to get into a good school and basically play something I loved until graduating and getting a normal job was as far as I had thought about it. I had already started playing, well, in college I had started playing for New Zealand, and I guess I thought that was, we didn't make any money, but it was a huge honor, and I loved playing for the national team. But it literally wasn't until my senior year of college when the WPS came back. And so this is 2009 that I started considering or dreaming of playing professionally. So this is, 2009 for a lot of people is a long time ago, but that's how recent we're looking at the history of of professional soccer as an American, at least, and having an opportunity to play professionally is still relatively new.
It's true. It's true. For sure. For sure. So like you talked about, after high school, you went on, play soccer in college. You went to Stanford University, which is like a really known like university. But when you were in high school, was it something that you wanted to do like from your freshman year, that you wanted to go to college and get a scholarship, or was it like later that you had
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I wanted to go to a high school that had a good soccer team. And then my freshman year, I made the varsity team, and there were a bunch of girls on the team who already had committed to schools, had scholarships to schools, and were looking at like USC, Columbia, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. These girls were also very, very smart, of course, but I just thought that was so cool. So it was from my freshman year that I just had this dream to continue to develop and to do whatever it took, basically, so that I could get a scholarship to play at a Division I school. So all 4 years, I really worked towards that.
Okay. And you made it, so...
Yeah. And it was funny because I definitely, even when it came around to my junior year, I was by no means a top recruit at all. And Stanford hadn't been a top program. I mean, yes, top 25 maybe, but not top 10, had never made it to a Final Four. And at the time, it was kind of like, this is a good fit for me. It's a good academic school. And, you know, that was important to me. And it was a great school, a great college program, but not, you know, a UNC or a UCLA or a Duke or Princeton, which at the time were the kind of powerhouses. And then it ended up being so incredible, and we did so well, not because of me, but because of my teammates and the other players that they recruited. And then now you have Stanford, the best team in the country, and has won, you know, a few championships. So it's funny because now everyone sees how Stanford is now, but at the time it was still like, oh, kind of a good fit for me. And I wasn't a top recruit. So it was like, oh, you know, I maybe will get some playing time. And then looking at it now, it's like, I mean, what an amazing, successful program.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I was about to ask you, like, how was your college year and how did it impact you, like both as a person and also as a player? Because obviously in the US, you can study and also play at a like really good level at the same time in college.
Yeah, I think for me it was perfect. It was where I developed so much as a person, really found myself and my values, and met so many incredible people, incredible teachers, and really grew up, I think. And that was at the same time when I started playing for New Zealand. So that obviously had a huge effect on me as well. But Paul Ratcliffe as a coach, I think, has been the best coach in terms of my development that I've had. Just his belief in me. And again, I wasn't coming in as a starter and no one knew who I was. And he really, I developed so many skills for me that have now basically impacted so much of my career, from playing on the left side because he put me on the left side, I was a winger. We played a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3. And then in high school, I was playing a 4-4-2 as a wide midfielder, and then at Stanford as a wide forward, and then turning me into a fullback and playing an attacking style, which right now everyone does and even has wing backs, but at the time was so unusual. And so I think so much of my success is definitely owed to Paul and that program. And just that opportunity of being social. I was in a sorority and partying a little bit, but also there's a responsibility of being at a good soccer program and then of course to keep your grades up. And that was important to me as well. And it was a lot to balance, but I think it set me up really well for the rest of my life. I hope. I haven't done anything but soccer since, but no.
Looking at it now, we can definitely say that it was a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. And now having been in Europe for 8 years, I can appreciate that it's not for everyone, and some players can go pro. You know, it's very cultural in the US that everyone, quote unquote, everyone goes to college, and the players on the US national team, 95% of them went to college before turning pro. So I think it's so normal here, but in Europe, you're looking at all the top players, or most of the top players on any national team probably didn't go to college and play soccer in college unless they went for a year or a few years in the US. So I can see and definitely respect that it's very different depending on where you come from and what your opportunities are. And financially, of course, if you don't get a scholarship, it's very expensive. But for me, I think if I had the choice to do it again, you know, I would do the exact same thing. For me, college was really, really beneficial.
So you will advise other people, if they have the chance to do it or the opportunity, that it's a great thing to do?
I think so, at least to try it, because once you play professionally, you can't play a sport in college, but you can always go there and see if you like it. And if you don't, you can go pro or you can leave. But you can only do it that way, not the other way. So I think, especially if it's a school like Stanford, I think especially if you're able to visit, if you're able to speak in depth with the coach and understand what your role will be, the stories I've heard where it hasn't gone so well, and this is for Swedes, for New Zealanders, for, players from all over the world, it's maybe ending up in an area of the country that didn't really suit them, or not getting playing time, or the team wasn't as good as maybe someone had sold it to them, or the coach, there's so many things. But if you're prepared, but I just think also it's worth a try. And if you don't like it, you can leave. I'm sure like the college coaches, if they're listening to this, are like, please don't do that. But I think that's still, it's worth a shot, because you might meet people, and having an education, you might end up wanting to stay in the US and getting a job, and that you almost need a college degree to get a lot of jobs here. And it just can open a lot of doors, and it's especially a school like Stanford. Of course, I only went to Stanford, so I can't speak for the other schools, but what an amazing, amazing school.
Of course. And you also have the university feeling and everything around it that you don't get if you're just playing pro at the beginning. Exactly.
And I think that's where, for me, I grew up a lot and developed as a person, and who I wanted to be and who I aspired to be, and had the resources to help me start my journey towards becoming that person. So I think, it's again, it totally depends on the school, but I love that Stanford had a campus and everyone, rode bikes, and it was just it's a great community.
For sure. So after college, you got drafted and played 2 seasons in the WPS. So first with FC Gold Pride in California, where you won the league your first year, and then the team was cut. So then you play and won the league again with Western New York Flash in Buffalo. But after that win, the entire WPS league was actually shut down. So how did that situation impacted you? Because it's really difficult, I guess, with the whole league shutting down.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was really traumatic. It took me 8 years to attempt to come back to the US, and then COVID happened, but can't blame that on the league. So it was devastating. And just, all these players, all these incredible players losing their jobs overnight. And I think looking back, it helped me with my career to then go overseas and spend these years in Europe, in Sweden, make a home in Sweden, play Champions League, and really, really change as a player in terms of working on sides of my game that weren't necessary maybe in the US. And, I had done well as a player in college, and in those 2 years, my teams, won the championships. But I think as a player, I still needed to develop a lot of the technical side and the tactical side, and the Swedish league was a great place to do that. And then being able to go on to clubs like Chelsea and FC Bayern Munich, and before then having an incredible offer to come back to Orlando and be closer to my family again. I think all of that happened because of the league folding, but it definitely was a very dark time and it was so sad. And that's why, you know, when the league came back just a year later, I didn't want to come back. And it also it pushed me to be very outspoken and to pay more attention to women in sport and push for more equality and push for better resources, better conditions, because going through first a team folding and then an entire league folding and being a part of all that, those experiences had a huge impact on me. And I don't want any player or league, you know, I don't want that to happen again. And the US League seems to be flourishing, but you still have teams. It wasn't that long ago, a team that Kristen Press and Marta had played on in Sweden folded, Tirsa. They were in a Champions League final and the team folded. So that's the reality of women's sport and women's soccer. And hopefully, and we definitely have come a long way since then, but I think it's just, for me, it made me want to be more active and use my platform to make people aware of our situation and also try to affect change.
Yeah, for sure. And like you talked about a bit, it was because of it that you went to Sweden in Europe, and I'm guessing everything happened for a reason, because you've played now 7 seasons in Sweden, and you won the Swiss championship and some cup. And then after that, you went to Chelsea in England, and then in Bayern Munich in Germany. So how was it like for you to leave for the first time, really, the US, and to move to Europe to play soccer, and also to be in a country where you didn't speak the same language?
Yeah, the language part was tough. Obviously, Swedes are so smart and well-traveled, and they all are super happy to speak English and very good at English, and TV is in English. But when the players are speaking to each other, of course, they're speaking Swedish. So it was still so isolating, and I was so sad. And my first season, we didn't train until 3 p.m. So I would go every day until 3 p.m. without speaking to anyone. And was just in this tiny apartment, because in Sweden, at least, it's really uncommon to have a roommate. And everyone, I mean, it's amazing. Everyone can have their own apartment, but that's so unusual as an American, when in college you're used to a roommate. When we played professionally, we had roommates, and it was so lonely. But soccer-wise, I loved it. And it was such a challenge, and I really liked being pushed. I liked learning. I liked winning. And I mean, again, we had such an incredible team at FC Rosengård. So that was I never really doubted my decision there, and the club and the coach always had so much confidence in me and really helped me. But socially, it was really, really hard, but it also encouraged me to learn the language pretty quickly. And then once I could speak Swedish and understand Swedish, just it opened up everything, and I loved it. And I think that's also why it became home. But yeah, I didn't know anyone on the team. I didn't know anything about the city. Nothing. I just wanted to play. And I think stories like this also, I mean, going to Sweden doesn't seem, especially now, like that scary. But, you know, players were going over to Russia to play Champions League. And, you know, I think of the New Zealanders, because we don't have a professional league in New Zealand, you know, leaving their homes, just, you have to. Like the things we do for the game, because we love soccer so much, because we're not making money like the men. So we make these crazy sacrifices and leave our friends, our family, everything we know to go to countries where the weather, the culture, the language, the food, everything is different, because we love soccer.
For sure.
And I think that's unique to the women's game.
Of course. And first of all, like, congratulations to learn like Swedish.
Thank you.
I've tried a bit, but I can speak more than like 10 words. So it's a really big accomplishment for sure. And so you talked a bit about it, but in what way would you say that it helped you grow as a player and as a person? Like the fact that you've been moving where you weren't too familiar with the culture and like you talked about not speaking the language.
Yeah, well, I think as a game, as I mentioned, just the Swedes take a lot of pride in their tactics and analysis, and have a very particular, each team has a certain style of play. You do a lot of preparation on your opposition. And technically, I think I was able to basically just run up the sideline, get the ball, boot it into the box. And if you have Christine Sinclair, Marta, Alex Morgan up there, they're probably going to score, you know? And I'm not saying that the Swedish, my teammates were worse, but it's just such a different style. The defense was much better. And little things like, you know, getting the ball and getting pressured, playing out of pressure. I don't know if I'm trying to think back. I know now the US, a lot of teams play a high pressure and it's a very counterattacking transitional game, but I don't remember in college or in my first 2 years playing pro in the US being put under high pressure and having to play a 1-2 or, you know, throw a fake to get out and combine to play out of pressure. I think we just played it long to someone running in behind and then pushed up, you know. So for me, then moving to Sweden, where the expectation if someone presses you is to be able to play in a very tight space, keep the ball. We were not direct at all. So that was so different. And that even, you know, playing rondos or, you know, whatever in different countries it's called, squares, whatever you want to call it. In the US, we call it 5v2, which it's not even always 5v2. But even that, you know, was so challenging. And then in Sweden, I thought it was hard, but, you know, got better, got used to being put under pressure in such a small space. And then going to Chelsea, where the girls, you know, are even more technical. And then going to Germany, where everyone just can play a ball on a dime on one touch. You know how like far behind the curve you are when it's like, depending on how long time you're in the middle. So I was always in the middle in Germany and always chasing. So I think just those nuances, of course, just made me adapt and have to develop my game. And I think the good thing about starting in the US and having that athleticism and fitness, that's something that's not going to leave you when you start to become more technical. So I hope we'll find out now, going back to the American League, that all of those experiences have helped me become a more complete player, and I can play a big role for Orlando this coming season. That's what I've promised to do. So hopefully, I'm really excited to be back too.
Yeah, for sure. And we can't wait to see as well your first game with Orlando.
Thank you. I know. A year later, I'll finally play my first game, hopefully.
For sure. You may be so impatient.
Yeah.
So apart from your time playing for different clubs, you also played for the New Zealand national team for 14 years now. First of all, since you are born and raised in the US, but your dad is from New Zealand, what made you choose to represent New Zealand national team? I understand that it was your dad that was the one that first reached out to the coach over there.
Yeah, exactly. He had read an article about the New Zealand Federation investing in an under-20s team. We had never had an under-20s team. And also that was the same year that I think it was called, maybe it was under-19 championships, and it became the under-20 World Cup in 2006. So that was the first under-20 World Cup. And because Australia, because of the men, they wanted to leave Oceania and join Asia. So anyone listening, yes, Australia is in the Asian Confederation, but New Zealand is in the Oceania, and Australia used to be in Oceania. So a lot opened up on the women's side for the New Zealand national team. So the federation started investing, and we just sent, I think, a DVD to the coach, and I got invited to try out when they were playing a few games in Australia when I was a senior in high school. But it wasn't a choice. I guess that's the, like, I wasn't choosing between different national teams like the US or New Zealand. I guess it was more choosing like to follow this path or not. But it was never, I never played for any of the American youth national teams or ODP. I don't know if ODP still exists, or any of the kind of selection teams. So when I had the opportunity to play for New Zealand under 20s, it was, of course, why wouldn't I? And then, we played there and we did okay, but I was starting at Stanford the following month. And then during that time, of course, I don't think I really thought about it that much, but there would have been a time there. I think if the US had been interested, then I never heard anything. There was no reason to not go from the under 20 national team to the full national team and play in the 2007 World Cup in China. So that was just a year later. So it was just kind of a very natural progression to play, especially to the opportunity to go to a World Cup. So yeah. And I've been a New Zealand citizen since I was a baby. So it wasn't like we, got citizenship so I could play for the national team. We had spent time there, and it was just, very kind of organic how everything happened.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And you actually made your debut with the national team when you were still in college, and you went on and play the World Cup, but also the Olympic. And I know how difficult it can be to study full time, play soccer. I mean, how did you manage to do it, all of this while still playing with your national team and traveling everywhere?
Yeah. Oh, when my teammates who are at university in New Zealand, or, some of them have gone to college in the US, when I see them now, with their computers and all their books and studying and doing tests on tour, I remember it so well, and I hated it. It was so hard. But at the same time, I think a lot of the colleges who have big athletic programs, they really respect their athletes, their student athletes, and they want players to be successful in as many areas as possible. And at Stanford, even 15 years ago, there was still an understanding that, to represent your country, whether it's the United States or not, is a great honor. We had a ton of Olympians, swimmers, rowers, every sport from every different country. So the teachers, the professors are very understanding. And of course, it's a tough balance with the honor code and sending players off to take tests in other countries and other cities. But a lot of it, I think my high school was very, very rigorous, very academically challenging, and that prepared me a lot for Stanford. But mostly, for me, I wanted to be successful at everything I did, and to do well at school was important. Again, I didn't know that I could play professionally, so I thought I was going to have to get a job later. So to study hard, to get good grades was very important, and to do well at soccer was important, but I didn't want to sacrifice one for the other. So it was just about getting it done. You just have to sit down and grind it out, and it was all-nighters a lot, but it was really important to me.
Yeah, for sure. So good memories from that.
Oh, it was tough. It was really tough.
So what does it mean for you to be able to represent New Zealand? Because you talked about the fact that it was a big honor. So
yeah, I think it's a country that I have, such a huge place in my heart for. Obviously, I grew up in the US, in Los Angeles, but having family in New Zealand and having amazing memories growing up there, and my team just means so much to me. They're amazing people. The values, I think the New Zealand is a country, is the first country who gave women the right to vote. And we have a female prime minister, and we have a female president of our federation. And I think what New Zealanders stand for and believe in resonates a lot with me. And then to have the honor of representing a country like that on the world stage is just... yeah, it's hard to put into words, but I think any country, like whatever the size, I think to be like a representative of an entire nation and to be the person given the responsibility to go on the field and try to bring success and honor to your country is so cool. And especially in New Zealand, we take it really seriously. I think not just wanting to perform on the field, but wanting to make sure that we are respectful of every culture that we encounter, and things like keeping locker rooms clean and being respectful to the teams we play. And I think the environment when we're on tour, like we always want to go to a beach and pick up trash. Like there's so much to the game that's not on the field, and to the national team that's more than just a soccer team. And I also think coming from a country where we're not a powerhouse, and there are little girls maybe who don't get to see a lot of soccer being played. Again, we don't have a professional league, that it's so important for us, again, to do well and to try to encourage more little girls to play. So every opportunity we get, every time we're on TV, every time anything with media, it's a huge responsibility to make sure you're saying things and acting in a way that is with integrity, and also in a way that's going to inspire more little girls to take up the sport and to understand that they can follow their dreams, that they can play soccer if they want, that they can be anything they want to be, And I think that's something that for me, being American and have played in the US, that's so big here, and it's been really successful. And I think you have little girls everywhere in this country knowing that they can grow up to be the next Alex Morgan, that they can play professionally, but we don't have that in New Zealand. So for me, that's also a huge goal of ours, and a responsibility that we take on as the national team.
For sure. That's awesome. So you were also named like the national team captain in 2017. So congrats. And is that role that you always been comfortable with taking it? And have you always seen yourself as a leader?
Yeah, I think it started a little bit in high school, because I was on the varsity team as a freshman, and that I think from then on I had that advantage of like being comfortable. So when I got a year older and then there were younger girls coming in, I had that year already having been on the team, and with, you get to know the coaches and the school and how everything works. And so for me, it kind of just happened probably because of being one of the younger players on the team. And then at Stanford, I think it just continued. And I also think that part of my strengths as a player was not always that I scored the most goals or could dribble the best, but because I communicated and I really care about the well-being of my teammates. And I also I trained a lot by myself and with a coach. One of my good friends who's like an older brother to me, Beast Mode Soccer, David Copeland-Smith. And I think that experience of having that like one-on-one personal training inspired me when I was in a position to help younger players. If I saw something or could give advice or just feedback. And I really like speaking, if you haven't noticed. So I think that really came naturally to me. And that's also, I think captains can act and leaders can lead in so many different ways. And it doesn't always have to be like the kind that communicates or likes being in front of the camera, or it can be just the best player on the team, because that's also inspirational and motivating. But I think for me, that kind of not mom role, but like a teacher, and my dad's a teacher, and that's probably where I got it too. But I think that has always come really naturally to me. And on whatever team I'm a part of, I'm always going to have that role. And I definitely do not need the title of being a captain. But of course, it's a huge honor to be named that and have that extra responsibility. And again, I take it on, not just on the field, but because I think we have a lot of leaders on the field, but I have so much to say off the field. And again, trying to change the landscape of women's sport in New Zealand means a lot to me. And so being that person who maybe gets asked a question about soccer and I can twist it to say something about, where we need to be better in terms of pushing the women's game forward. So I've taken it as an opportunity to say more and do more than just lead on the field.
For sure. Awesome. That's awesome. And being part of that national team, you already play like 3 Olympic Games and 4 World Cup, which is like so impressive, knowing that some athletes just dream of going to 1 Olympic game or play 1 World Cup. So how has that been for you, like to experience those tournaments like multiple times, even though I know that maybe you didn't get the result that you wanted?
Yeah, we definitely have not done well at those tournaments. But again, every time we're on that stage, especially now, I mean, you saw how it was in France with the publicity and the engagement. And that's an opportunity for us to push forward for women's sport in New Zealand. And every time we're on TV and encourage the more media that's going on in social media now, obviously that wasn't happening in 2007.
Yeah, for sure.
But these are all opportunities to change the world. And I think you're seeing that the game is changing, but it's also society we're trying to change and policies. And I think it's also really important for me to, now when we're hosting the next World Cup, which is the coolest thing ever, to have had the experience of being at the different tournaments. And it's like, what are we going to do better? What do we want to have the same? I think a lot of especially on the media side and the fan side and the way the tournament was run in France, there were a lot of things that I think we want to keep doing because it was so successful. But I think having that experience will also help me as I'm involved in kind of the planning of the tournament and pushing FIFA to make improvements to make the next tournament even better is really helpful. Having been to so many tournaments, but it's also, I mean, it's just incredible to play teams from all these different countries and different styles, and also having teammates from all over the world from the different club teams I've played on. It's a really cool place to connect with old friends, and it's just all eyes are on women's soccer for that month. And that's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. And we were actually like in France during the World Cup. So we went to a different game. Unfortunately, we didn't went to a New Zealand game, but yeah, it was awesome. We really liked the atmosphere and it was really cool. Like actually, I think they did like a pretty good job.
Yeah, definitely.
For the World Cup. So how would you say that the experience, like, and also your approach, like, to those competitions have changed over the year? Obviously, because from the first one in your first year of college to now.
Yeah, it's completely different. I think the tournament is completely different. The quality of the game is different. And for me personally, I'm a much different player. I'm a much better player. The team is much better. Again, it sucks that we haven't done better as a team, but I think that's also because the game is growing and developing. In most other countries, it's developing faster than it is in New Zealand. But I think those first 2 years in 2007 and 2008, I mean, I think we had a 16 or 15-year-old on the team, and a lot of us were really young. We had just played at the Under-20 World Cup the year before, and we were just so excited to be there. And I don't remember, I know we did tactical preparation, but like, I remember just getting on the field and being like, oh my God, like, what are we doing? And then now I think we were so close to beating the Netherlands, but tying. It was in the last seconds of the game where they beat us 1-0. And at the 2012 Olympics, we made it to the quarterfinals, got knocked out by the US. Like we've improved a lot, and we're up there, but it's so different than in the beginning. And we're talking about, again, New Zealand, we don't have a lot of funding and we need to make improvements in that area. But all things considered, I think from the resources, I mean, now everyone's wearing GPS, and if it's hot, you have like cooling vests and all these things that we didn't have before. But it's just, I think in our case, there are other teams that have even more resources and access to even better things, but and not having a professional league as well. New Zealand is pretty isolated in terms of geography. But yeah, it's so different, and now we go like expecting we have to win a game at a World Cup, and that was what was so devastating, to not win a game, to not get out of the group. We had a tough group, but we go in there like really believing that we can do it. We're going to make history, and at least for me, I have one more chance, I think, in 2023 to finally do that for New Zealand. But yeah, we'll see when this Olympic Games finally gets played, hopefully next year.
Yeah,
but
hopefully next year.
I think it'll be a very different experience just from everything that the world is going through.
Probably. But on the positive side, like maybe it will be even more beautiful to make history at home.
Exactly. And even more devastating if we don't. So the pressure is on.
Yeah, for sure. But we're not going to talk about this side. Let's just be positive. So I also read in an interview that your definition of success in the women's soccer was not only like the actual trophy, but things like funding and more resources and better facility. Mm-hmm. But what would you say that success mean to you individually? Like, how do you measure your personal success? Is it like the award? Is it playing the sport? Is it having the voice for you to improve the game?
Yeah, I think for me it's all so tied together, because the better player I am and the more successful I am in the field, the more attention that I can get, which makes my platform even bigger, which helps me inspire more people and affect more change. So I think when I retire, or even now, I think if we can push the game forward, and I can have been a small part of that, and especially in New Zealand, I think that would certainly mean that I had a successful career. And I think in terms of what I've achieved with my teams, definitely I can already say it's been an amazing ride. But I think just my attention is not shifted, but just more inclusive of what's going on off the field, because that's the only way that my teammates in New Zealand, the next generation, not just in New Zealand, but all over the world, will be able to have an even better experience than I did, and to not go through their team folding or having to struggle. We have New Zealand players who they're missing work when they go off with the national team and are struggling for money because they don't play professionally because they're in school, and we don't get paid by the national team. So there are a lot of hardships for players, and I would love to see that change while I'm still playing, but certainly after. And I think if I can stay involved in women's soccer when I stop playing and have opportunities to continue to work with FIFA Pro, to push for change, to be involved in the sport, that would also be that would also mean that I was successful to kind of have those doors open, and that I've done a good job in wanting to push the game and raise the ceiling, and hopefully that will open more doors to continue doing that when I stop playing.
Of course. And looking already at what you have done and accomplished, you already like made a change, like already just with like your country and the fact like of being the captain and stuff, you already did like so much. And maybe like because you're so into it, maybe you don't necessarily see like all of the impact that you have had already. So yeah, for sure, that's awesome. And talking about like equality, playing professional for many years, like what would you say like is the biggest improvement that you've seen, and what do you think has to change next? Like, of course, it's a maybe difficult question.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that have improved, but there are a lot of things that need to be improved still. I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed personally in terms of the clubs I've played for is like the media, and in terms of the impact of Instagram and the media accounts of these big clubs, having a male player just do a story like, oh, the women are playing, like, I wish them luck. Like, that can just get all these people following in a women's account. And because we don't make huge salaries, obviously the salaries have grown, but it's still, a lot of players can't live on their salaries, and barely any of us will be able to save enough to not have a job after we retire. Creating connections and having sponsors that aren't part of your salary can make a huge difference in a player's financial well-being. And that's where the social media has like a huge impact, where as a player, you're also kind of an influencer or have the opportunity to be an influencer and can make either more money or also just product, and things that can be really helpful, whether it's recovery boots and recovery tools, or food subsidized, or a snack energy bar or protein powder, whatever it may be. Obviously, I think ideally it would be money compensation, but those things are very new and very beneficial to the professional women's player. I think where we need to improve, while all that is fine and good, I think some of the basics in terms of having like a minimum acceptable standard for the professional game is so acute. And FIFPro did a global report and have looked at what the situation is like all over the world. And we're looking at, not having a physio or not having a doctor at trainings, or the locker room, and we're like health and safety. I mean, simple things, not being provided a safe accommodation. These are things that, how can you be expected to perform your best? How can you be expected to stay healthy and have a long career if you can't have some of these basic needs? So that's very important, I think, along with having something in place. And this is also currently, there was just news that FIFA has made some improvements in this area, but making sure that players have maternity leave and protection. And again, that's a way for us to have a family, but also do what we love and have a job. And in every other aspect of society, you can have a kid and usually have a job. But in soccer or in sport, we seem to be a little bit behind in a few areas. So I think those for me are big ones. And there's a good conversation going on about it, and especially FIFPro. I love FIFPro. I think having a global players union like that is so important. So it's definitely at the top of the list for them.
That's awesome to see that there is improvement, but obviously, like you talked about, there is like still a long way to go in terms of like equality with the men's side, for sure. But you're also really active on social media, and you actually also have your own podcast called like Girls with Balls, which is like an awesome name, where you speak with other female soccer players. What made you start this podcast, and what are the future plans with it?
Well, for the same reason as you, to empower players, but also empower the listeners. And I think right now, again, it's kind of interesting because as the game improves and as the salaries get higher, but eventually players will be able to save enough money and not have to like also be in school or also have jobs or also, do all these things. But right now, the situation is that, as you know, a lot of us have a lot more going on than what is just on the field. And I want to show that. I think it's a beautiful part of the game. It's sad that it's a necessary part of our life, but I think while it is the way it is, why not embrace it and let these players have a platform to like brag about what they do and share all their accomplishments and the amazing things players are doing in the community and helping with charities, helping, just open up about all the challenges, injuries, mental health, just so coming out. All these amazing topics that are so important for everyone to hear. And yeah, it's been really, really cool. And I think because a lot of the players have been my close friends, you kind of ask questions that aren't appropriate for journalists to ask or other people to ask in interviews, and finding that level of comfort and have it just be kind of like a fun conversation that other people get to listen to has been really fun. But for the future, I'm not sure. I think there's so many amazing podcasts. There's so many people like you doing a similar thing. I know it's unique in terms of having, a player to player conversation, but yeah, I'm actually not sure what the future of girls with balls is. But, again, in Orlando, I'll have amazing players and teammates to be able to interview. But yeah, it could evolve into maybe something more on camera, because that's always fun as well to get that side of it. And yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
But anyway, I listened a few episodes, and it was really fun to listen. So if there is people listening and they don't know this podcast, then we will put everything on the description, and they should definitely go check it out. Because like you say, even if we are having this kind of similar podcast, it's also like we all have space for each other, I will say. And in
definitely.
Each podcast, you can learn like new thing and stuff. And so what you're doing, you should definitely keep going.
Oh, thank you.
So you talk about a bit about like other things that you also do with your platform, and I've seen that you use your platform like recently to speak up about other issues as well. For example, you recently made this collaboration with a Swedish clothing brand from Malmo, showing your support for the LGBTQ plus community. I really like the logo and the colors.
Thank
really
you.
It's really awesome. So how important is it for you to also use your platform to not just talk about soccer, but other issues?
It's so important. That's why I do it. And I think there's no one right way to use social media. It's not a bad thing if players or public figures don't have social media at all. I think it can be also hard at times, and people can say whatever they want. But for me, I think it's been really cool to share parts of my life that maybe other people don't get to see, and little girls or fans or friends, might be interested in. And I think being well-rounded and showing that our lives have so much more to them than just football, obviously, because it kind of has to on the one side, but also just because, we're people and have other things we enjoy. But the other side of that, of course, is I definitely feel a responsibility to use my platform to do good and to spread positivity, or also hold people accountable, or in this case, be an ally. And a lot of people, I guess I try to think of the kind of person I want to be and the things that are important to me in life. And I can't just say that. I have to actually take action to show that I mean what I say. So to do this collaboration, I think so many of my close friends and teammates are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And to have an opportunity to do a collaboration with a clothing company, I thought, why not use this opportunity to promote and bring awareness and also raise money for a really, really good and important cause. So it was so fun. And I love seeing people in Malmo wearing my products. So yeah, it was a really good experience. I've never done anything like that. And it encouraged me certainly from the feedback, to continue to do things like that.
For sure, you must be proud to be in the street and see someone wearing like the collection you did.
It's so crazy. It's so weird. And hopefully, again, it also inspires other players, or not even just players, but anyone who has the opportunity to, in my case, instead of take the profits that I would have earned, to donate them, or to come up with just any other way to put your, ideas into action to help people who need it, to whether, there was a really cool trend going on, or it's still going on now, but to amplify Black voices, just handing over your Instagram account for the day. It doesn't have to be like, because we're all coming from different places in terms of, our money or whatever we can do, but there are ways that don't cost anything to actually make a big impact.
Awesome. And I also wanted to ask you about some tough moment during your career. What would you say like has been the biggest challenge that you had to face, and how did you overcome it?
Probably until COVID hit, because that was really, I mean, for everyone, I think it's been such a hard year and just so unpredictable. And I think anything where I don't feel like I have control, and as athletes, like we love working towards something, having goals and being in control. And the things I think that are the hardest are things like health. So, and obviously a global pandemic kind of falls in under that, injury and playing time. And yes, in terms of improving and trying to earn a coach's confidence and get playing time, is how you act, how you train is something you can control. But when the coach makes that final decision who plays, and it's their opinion, and that's out of your control. You can control how you react to it and what you do to try to change a situation. But I think for me, being injured, having my first kind of long-term injury, which I'm really lucky to have kind of gotten to, I guess I was maybe 31 and not had a long-term injury when I went to Chelsea. That was really hard coming back from that, and never breaking into the starting lineup was really hard. It was the first time it had happened to me. And then, I think just like when the league folded, like when the pandemic came, and going to Orlando and being so excited, and then the team, having cases in the team and not being able to play in the tournament, which ended up being a huge success, which is great. But, that was just not knowing what was going to happen, if I was going to ever play soccer in the rest of the year. Like, should I keep training? How can I stay fit? It was very, very stressful.
Yeah, I bet. And hopefully we see the end of it pretty soon, and hopefully, everything can go back to normal, like for everyone, I think, because and during those like maybe difficult time, or maybe at another point during your career, did you ever like consider giving up on like soccer, and just be like, you know what, I'm done with that and I want to do something else?
No, never, not even once.
That's awesome to hear. And playing for your country, I'm sure that you've experienced feeling of pressure through your career, and especially like being the captain as well. It's a lot more responsibility. How did you deal with those feeling of maybe being like frustration and disappointment, and to go back and to just like still be motivated to keep going?
Yeah, well, it's hard. It's definitely, I think it's something that a lot of players experience, throughout their careers, when you don't perform well, or if the results don't come. And obviously with the New Zealand team, we haven't had the best results. But I think, I don't know, for me, I love the sport so much. And I also, regardless of the result, I've also worked with different sports psychologists and cultural mentors and leadership mentors. And I think what it's come down to for me is that I love the game so much. I love my team. And as long as you're giving your best and like working every day, being professional, and you can look in the mirror and kind of be like, I gave everything I had. Maybe you make mistakes, but like, and then how you react to it, trying to get better, improve. Yeah, it takes away the frustration. I think, of course, there can be kind of unlucky situations or referees, whatever. There could be other things too. But I think what a lot of the New Zealand team, like, I know that players are considering, our resources and where we're playing and what it's like when we're traveling. I know that I can count on them to give everything. And sometimes it's not good enough. When you're playing the US, sometimes it's not good enough. But I don't know. I think now I definitely have a better understanding of like intent and mentality and hard work, and then results and performance. And you kind of have to be able to separate the two. And it's taken many, many years. But I also, again, I think when you also have to have perspective. And for me, working with mindfulness, and that's another important part of my game, to be grateful and look, I'm playing soccer like as my job, and I get to go and travel to these amazing countries and play at a World Cup and Olympics. Like you say, players may never ever get to do that. I'm healthy. I think when you kind of start each day thinking about those things and end each day, then it softens all the blows. But I mean, it's sport. It can be really heartbreaking, but when you love it and you realize how lucky you are to be doing it, then you keep going.
So you will say like your love for the sport and overcome like all of this moment of frustration and your team.
Yeah.
As well.
And what the sport brings for me, having this platform and helping other people, getting to have this team of girls that I love, traveling, everything. Definitely. Of course, when you have injuries, like that's really hard because you can't that's not the same as a loss or making a mistake in a game. That's something that you really can't control. But, in terms of just being frustrated and sad, like about not playing or not doing well in a game, that all definitely, doesn't come close to like affecting how much I love doing what I do and having the opportunity to do it.
Of course. And since you play like football since you were a kid, what impact would you say that the sport of football, but also just the sport had on your life?
I think, again, having it be a team sport and working with other people, wanting the people around me to feel good, and that also helps us be successful. Like getting the best out of your teammates is going to help me be my best, of course, because there's 11 of us on the field. And that camaraderie, I think for any job, well, there are jobs where you are just by yourself, I guess. But for most jobs where you're working with other people, I think teamwork and coming back from a setback together is important. Being able to overcome different obstacles. But for me, I think it really comes down to kind of that team environment, and I love and culture. And I think that's been key to my success and is a huge part of me as a player and as a person. And I think that's why I also really want little girls to have the opportunity to play a team sport and to play soccer, because soccer, I mean, you just need like a can, and you can kick it around. And, but I think the opportunity to like have that team and have other girls, women around you supporting you, it helps in so many other aspects of life. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become a professional soccer player or play for your national team, but I think you can learn so many positive things by being on a team and having that support network.
For sure. And we also saw that you donated one of your jerseys to an action caused by like One Goal and Dear Football to help like to raise money to give girls in Uganda, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
The opportunity to play sport. We also, we play for different jersey, but we didn't win any jersey, but it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah, well,
it was just
thank you so much for
to,
donating. Yeah, it's so important to have this academy for girls.
For sure, we've been following that One Goal account, and then we saw that you participated as well, so that's awesome. So we spoke a bit before about your role in the New Zealand team, but right now and with the future, what impact do you hope you can have, especially like on the women's soccer in New Zealand, as you talked about the fact that there is still no professional league over there, and also with the World Cup coming in 2023?
I think it's important in the next few years to make sure that like the momentum from the World Cup and the excitement around women's soccer and winning the bid continues, to make sure that we're really on board as the host nation and also as us players pushing for things to make sure that the tournament is a success for the players, for the fans, and just realizing that it's an opportunity to not necessarily have a professional league in New Zealand, but maybe have a team in the Australian league. And then the future of the Australian league also is really exciting to see if that can become a longer season. Right now, I think it's about 3 months and players play there and somewhere else. And yeah, I think there's so many opportunities, and we need the sport to grow. We need more little girls to play if we want the national team to improve and develop. And it starts from those little girls at the youngest age. And again, also just making sure that not just little girls, but that little boys are able to look up and have role models that are women, and that fans, and we've got these rugby fans and the all whites fans, that they also can jump on board and celebrate their national team. So yeah, there's a lot to do, but it's all really exciting. And I think having a successful World Cup can change the future of the national team.
For sure. For sure. I mean, it's already a success that the World Cup is going to be over there.
Definitely. Yes.
For sure. And it's definitely going to have an impact. But where do you hope to see the national team and obviously the next generation of women soccer player in New Zealand?
Yeah, like I said, I hope that there's an opportunity to play professionally closer to home. That would really help. And from there, then you have more little girls realizing that you can play professionally and seeing their idols closer to home and more regularly, being able to see games that aren't in the middle of the night. And that then would change everything in terms of players having professional experience, more players, and then that is going to help the national team. And I think being, right now we're in and out of the top 20, but there's no reason, if we have players everyone playing professionally and more little girls playing more competition, that we should break into the top 10 or at least be beating top 10 teams. And again, who knows what, I know the World Cup is opening up to more teams, but we only have the one spot coming from Oceania, and we want to make sure that we don't lose that spot, because right now it's a pretty easy way into these tournaments. So yeah, I think the sky's the limit, but right now just the more short-term goal is to make sure as many players as possible can play professionally.
Okay, awesome. And talking about you personally and your goal, because you talked about we talked about the fact that you just back to Orlando, and you're gonna play back in the US and be close to your family. How do you see that? I'm sure you're excited, and what are your goals coming back to the US?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier just being able to hopefully kind of come full circle and having been successful back after Stanford in the WPS, but having, I hope, developed my game a lot since then. So again, Orlando, while we didn't get to participate in the tournament this year, but didn't have a successful season the year prior. So to take the team from, the team that finished last to definitely the playoffs, there'll be 6 teams in the playoffs now, and to be in the running to win a championship, of course, that's the goal. So, and being a part of that and creating a culture. Mark only had, the one season where there were players that he hadn't recruited. And I think this is hopefully the chance now. He's building his vision, and the culture he wants to build. And the community there is so amazing, the fans, and to bring them some excitement and success. And the men's team, I think, set a good precedent, now with their playoff run. And yeah, I think it would be really great. It's such a good community, and to represent them and do well, with Mark at the head of it would be really, really cool. So hopefully being a senior player and having a lot of experiences to contribute in whatever way possible, but hopefully on the field to a successful season. We want to win. We want to win it all.
Yeah, for sure. So exciting things coming for sure.
Yes.
So obviously I hope that you still have a lot of soccer to play before retiring, but have you ever thought about what you want to do once you decide to retire? You talked a bit about still having an impact into the women's soccer and having a voice. But
yeah, I think that's the goal. So what form that takes, I'm really not sure yet. There's so many things I like to do. You know, I have my food Instagram and sharing recipes. I think health and wellness is important. I have the podcast. I really like being involved in media. But while we're playing, it's hard to know kind of what job opportunities are out there and what I like doing, because everything I do is like on the side of soccer. So I don't know, but just, the things that are important to me are, of course, pushing the game forward and equality and inspiring the next generation and being involved in soccer. So hopefully that can take lots of different forms, and there'll be something that fits well in however many years.
For sure. So I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
And I'm done. What is the last thing you read or watch, like a book or movie, that you were inspired by, that we could check it out, and the people that listen as well?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Well, okay. The book that I am currently listening to, I want to make sure I get the name right. Oh, and I'm doing my recording here, is So You Want to Talk About Race. And that is very, very educational. And I think it's important for everyone to understand how and why talking about race is important. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, obviously it's centuries too late to finally start talking about it, but better late than never. So that's the book that I am currently listening to. And it's really, really enlightening.
Awesome.
And it's uncomfortable, which is important.
Yeah, I know. That's really important to have those conversations and to hear other opinion as well.
Yeah.
And my last question. So since this podcast is all about sharing professional athlete unique story to show that everyone's journey is different, if you could give one piece of advice to the people who are listening and have big dreams, and that they want to reach, what would it be?
I would say that it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to achieve your dreams. But when like an obstacle comes or challenges comes, there are different ways to reach your goals. So I think believing in yourself and having confidence to, like, if one door closes, that another door can open if you work hard. Not to just expect that everything will fall into place for you. But I think right now, especially if we're talking specifically about soccer, it's like, maybe you don't make the US national team, but you can become an incredible professional player. Maybe, you don't get drafted to the league here, but now there are teams, the Women's Champions League is going on right now. There are teams all over Europe. There are leagues all over Europe. The opportunities are just, I'm not going to say endless, but there's so many now compared to before. So I think just not getting discouraged because there's so many different paths that you can take. And while you're on that path, like a different path, that maybe your end goal kind of changes too. And I, really liked Mia Hamm and wanted to go to the Olympics. Obviously thought that I would be going for the US, but everything, my journey ended up being so different, but I still am, living my dream and have just had the most amazing career and life. And I'm so lucky, but of course it was nothing that I could have predicted. Not even, a year ago, I like to go back to Sweden and play the league there. I could never have even predicted that. So things will get in the way, but it can also end up being something even better. But it definitely takes a lot of hard work and dedication and some sacrifices as well.
Okay. Awesome. So thank you so much, Ali, for coming in the podcast. And if people want to follow you, and is that Instagram the best place to do it? So, or Twitter? Facebook?
Yeah, my Twitter got hacked, so that was I'm kind of trying to build up again. Oh, okay. But I'm somewhat active on there, but definitely Instagram.
Okay, sounds good. So we will put every link in the description.
Thank
Instagram,
you. Great.
Twitter,
awesome.
The podcast. So thank you so much for coming to the podcast, Ali. It was such like a great conversation and a pleasure to have you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well. Thanks for having me.